we're going to do every potion in KCD2. Each potion will have its own timestamp in the description below, and I'll show you its Henry effects once we have crafted said potion. In case you don't know, you will need to have Secret of Secrets to get the Henry potion, and I like to use Secret of Matter on both tiers so that we get more per craft, as once you understand how to make them perfectly, it's not really necessary to use Secrets of Equilibrium. We'll be starting with Hair of the Dog potion, which begins with water. I generally find it easier to prepare the ingredients from the recipe book, but as you can see, this is mint, St. John's wort, and sage. To start with, we add the sage and the wort to the cauldron. And we boil this for 3 turns. When it just says boil, that means we drop the cauldron down and then we'll turn the hourglass. We need that to run out 3 times, and that'll mean that we've boiled it for long enough. Because we've got quite a bit of time here, I can say that we're going to add the mint to the mortar and pestle in a second, because this needs grinding when we add it, final stage of the potion. I've seen people working out the timings between grinding and adding to potions and stuff. If you guys want to work out how to do things faster, that's up to you guys. I'm just making sure we 100% get the Henry level potion as we go through this. So we're going to raise up the cauldron, grind the mint, and then drop that in. There's no additional cooking at this stage, so just grab the file, pour that into the potion. There's a Henry Hair of the Dog. Let's see what that does. For those that wish to see, eliminates drunkenness, hangover, and temporarily suppresses the effects of alcoholism. I guess the unfortunate thing with that is the Henry's Marigold Decoction gets rid of hangovers anyway. Next up is Artemisia, where we're going to get additional strength. This requires sage and 2 wormwood, and starts with spirit. This is one of the ones where I was saying before, if you can time the grinding correctly, maybe you can make this a little bit shorter. But basically all we do is we add the sage to the cauldron. We're going to drop that down and boil it for 1 turn. And then we need to add 2 wormwood to the mortar and pestle. At this point, once the hourglass has run out, I'm going to lift that up. I'm sure there's probably some avenue of adding the wormwood first, grinding whilst the sandglass goes down, and then adding it. But I'm doing it this way because it's just easier. I'd rather not be rushing around. Add that in. And then we boil this for 2 more turns. So there goes the first one. And then the second one. Lift up the cauldron. And this one is actually distilled. So when one is distilled, instead of going onto the cauldron, we go onto this little contraption here on the left. And there we have the Henry's Artemisia. Henry's Artemisia, looking very nice for combat with defending costing less stamina and additional 6 strength. Next up, we have the Digestive Potion, which uses charcoal. In case you can't spot the charcoal, I'll point that out now. You can see that it lands on this book here, sometimes a bit hard to see. Nettle and dried thistle. We start out with water. We add 2 thistle to the cauldron. This goes down for the boil. 2 turns, so we're going to go ahead and flip this over, and we can add nettle to the mortar and pestle. Flip over the hourglass. Again, you could probably grind this right now and add it, because we are going to have to grind this, put it in, and then boil it for an additional turn. But for me, just because it's easier, I'm going to lift that, grind this up, add that in. And we drop this down for 1 more turn. And then we put the charcoal into the mortar and pestle. Lift up the cauldron again, grind up the charcoal. Add that into the cauldron. And then we can pour that into a potion. Henry's Digestive Potion, as you can see. Effects of this one are decreases nourishment by 30, kills poisoning, increases vitality by 3 for 20 minutes. Next up we have Bowmans Brew. This just requires Eyebright and St. John's wort. We start out by adding spirit. And we add 2 Eyebright into that. And this needs boiling for 3 turns, so fairly long. We'll drop that down, turn the hourglass. Put the wort into the mortar and pestle. That's our first bit done. This is the second. Flip it over again. Lift up the cauldron. Grind up the St. John's wort. And add that in. We actually need to boil this with the bellows for 1 turn. So then this is the first time we've done that for this video. So we drop the cauldron down, turn the hourglass. And now we want to hold down the bellow button and you let go just as the hand reaches the top. And whilst we're doing that, we need to keep an eye on the hourglass. And then we can lift that up. And then lastly, this is not a pour, this is a distill. So make sure we get this correct, otherwise you've just wasted everything. There we have Henry's Bowmans Brew. We can see additional 8 marksmanship and you no longer lose stamina while aiming. Pretty useful if you want to be a big archer. Next up is going to be the Bane Potion. The Amanita muscaria is the fly agaric, so that can be a little bit confusing sometimes. Then of course we need the dried wormwood and the belladonna. To start with, we add wine to the cauldron. And then we put 1 wormwood in. This gets boiled for 2 turns, so turn the glass, and then we can add 2 belladonna to the mortar and pestle. Turn the hourglass. Again, you probably could be grinding this right now, but I'm still going to prefer to do it the easier way, in my opinion. Lift up the cauldron, grind the belladonna. Drop that in. Now this is another 1 turn of boiling with the bellows, so we're going to drop that down, turn the sandglass, begin bellowing as before. So we hold that down, let go just as the hand gets to the top so that it doesn't stop with the bellowing. That should be enough, we can lift that up. From here we had the mushroom. Throw that in. And again, this is another distill. It's very easy to sometimes just default go into the cauldron, but we want to come to the little thing on the left. Going to give us Henry's Bane Poison, which basically, if you compare this to the other one, makes the damage occur over half of the time. So basically concentrates the poison for us. Next up is the Fox Potion. So as you can see, this requires belladonna, St. John's wort, nettles, and charcoal. Quite greedy. This one starts with oil. We add St. John's wort and nettles to the mortar and pestle together. We grind those up. Add that to the cauldron. This gets boiled for 2 turns, so we're going to drop that down. Flip the sandglass. And then whilst that's going down, we can add the charcoal to the mortar and pestle, because that's going to be next. Flip the sandglass. I'm going to lift the cauldron. Grind the charcoal. Add that in. Now we add the belladonna into the cauldron. Boil for 1 more turn. Lift that back up. This is a pour potion, so we grab the phial, use that on the cauldron. That gives us Henry's Fox. Henry's Fox Potion is extremely strong, as the amount of experience that we gain for 2 days whilst we have this is increased by 50%, so very good for basically anybody. Next up, we'll be doing Cockerel, which is 2 handfuls of mint and 1 handful of valerian. So we're going to add 2 handfuls of mint to the mortar and pestle. We add spirit to the cauldron. Grind up the mint. And then we add that in. This gets boiled for 1 turn. Now, the next stage of this is to add in 1 valerian and then boil for 2 more turns. I'm sure if you have it in your hand ready, you could probably drop that in and then quickly turn the hourglass 2 more times and get away with it. But again, for accuracy's sake and to make sure this goes well for me, I'm going to add that in there, drop it back down again, turn the hourglass, wait for this to boil again. There's the second turn. And then once that's done, we can lift it up. This is a distill potion, so don't go to the cauldron, come to the little thing on the left. That'll give us Henry's Cockerel, which, as you can see, increases energy by 30 and energy increases 50% slower for a day. Very powerful. Next up, everybody's favorite. I'm sure everybody already knows this one, but we have to include it if we're going to do everything. I'm sure everybody knows by now. For Saviour Schnapps, it's belladonna and nettles. And to start with, we add wine to the cauldron. We add a handful of nettles to the wine. And this gets boiled for 2 turns. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Turn the hourglass. And then we add 2 belladonna to the mortar and pestle. Be careful not to press on it too much, because we don't want to start grinding that too early. Turn the sandglass. And again, this is probably one way you could be grinding right now and then add it in. But I prefer to do it the safer way. Once that's done, we're going to lift it up. Grind up the 2 belladonna. Add it in. Boil for 1 more turn. Once that's done, we lift it up. Grab the phial. And pour that out. There we have Henry Saviour Schnapps. The additional effects being, when you use it, you get 8 minutes of additional strength, vitality, and agility, which is kind of interesting. Next up, we have another favorite of mine, which is the Marigold Decoction. Probably the best one to level with as well. Again, we need nettles and marigolds. This stuff should be pretty easy to get. Start out by adding water to the cauldron. We add nettle to the water. And this gets boiled for 2 turns. So we can turn the hourglass. And then we add 2 marigold to the mortar and pestle. Turn the hourglass. Right here, maybe you probably do have the right amount of time to grind that up and add it in. I'm going to choose to lift it. Grind up the marigold. Add that in. And then we can pour that into a potion. Henry's Marigold Decoction, best in the game. As we can see, this one, 60 health over 1 minute. That's 1 health a minute returned and instantly cures the hangover effect. Next up is Moonshine. Those of you out there that like to get drunk. As you can see, this takes mint and dried wormwood. And as you might imagine, we start out by pouring up some spirit. And we start by adding 2 wormwood to the cauldron. This gets boiled for 2 turns, so we're going to get that down, turn the sandglass, and then we add 2 mint to the mortar and pestle. It's 1, and then 2. Turn the hourglass. I'm going to lift that up. Grind up the mint. Add that to the mix. This gets boiled for an additional turn. So we get that stewing over the fire. Once that finishes, we can lift it up. And then this gets distilled. Which just gives us standard moonshine, apparently. With moonshine's effect being fairly obvious, it is just very strong alcohol. Next up, we have the Aesop Potion. This uses the comfrey and belladonna, as well as a boar's tusk, which is kind of unusual. Start out by pouring the spirit. We take 2 handfuls of comfrey. We add them to the mortar. And then we grind up the comfrey. Add that to the cauldron. We drop the boar's tusk into the cauldron as well. So we get that in there. This gets boiled for 2 turns. So there's the first turning. Whilst that's happening, we can add belladonna to the mortar and pestle. So we'll get that in there now. We can turn the sandglass, wait for that to run out so that we can lift it. And then once that's done, we lift up the cauldron, grind up the belladonna. That goes into the mixture. And then we distill it. So that's using the item on the left rather than the main cauldron. Here we have Henry's Aesop. As we can see, this increases horsemanship and houndmaster for a day and allows us to sneak around animals easier. Next up, we'll be doing Embrocation, which as you can see, takes a variety of ingredients. So we've got eyebright, poppy, valerian, and wild boar. Tusk, obviously, not meat. This starts out by adding in oil to the cauldron. And then we add 1 poppy and 1 valerian to the cauldron as well. So valerian and poppy. This gets boiled for 2 turns, so we drop that down, turn the sandglass, and then we can add eyebright to the mortar and pestle. Turn the sandglass over. I'm going to wait for this to run out so we can lift up the cauldron. Again, you could probably be grinding this up right now. I think it's just easier to lift the cauldron up once it finishes. So we're going to lift this up, grind up the eyebright, add that in. Throw the boar's tusk in as well. This boils for 1 turn, so we put that back down. Turn the sandglass, wait for it to run out. Should just take a few seconds. Once it's done, we can obviously go ahead and lift that up. Grab the phial. And this potion is poured at the end. Gives us additional agility and sprint cost efficiency, 20 minutes. Next up we have the Nighthawk Potion. So as we can see, 2 eyebright, 1 belladonna, and chamomile. We start out by adding water to the cauldron. And then we put 2 eyebright into the mortar. Grind that up. Add that to the water. We grab a belladonna, drop that into the mix. And then this gets boiled for 3 turns, so we're going to drop that down, turn the sandglass. And then whilst that's happening, we're going to add chamomile to the mortar and pestle at the bottom there. So 3 turns, we're going to wait for this to go on down, turn the sandglass. We're going to wait for this one to run down as well. And then when that's done, turn it over again. And of course now we're going to wait to lift up the cauldron. Once it gets towards the end, we can lift the cauldron up and grind the mortar and grind the chamomile. This gets added to the mix. And then we can grab the phial and pour to finish the potion. Gives us the Henry's Nighthawk, which as we can see, you can see better in the dark. Energy decreases slower at night, so should basically make it so that we barely have to sleep. Next up is the Dollmaker Potion, which as we can see requires 2 Herb of Paris and 1 valerian. We start out by adding some spirit. And then we add in 2 Herbs of Paris. This gets boiled for 3 turns, so we're going to drop that down. Turn the sandglass. And we are going to have to grind the valerian, so we're going to put 1 of those into the mortar and pestle ready. Turn the sandglass. And we can wait for this one to run on out. Turn it again. Probably could grind this and add this right now. I'm told by lots of people that works, but I still prefer to do it the safer way, in my opinion. So we're going to let that run out, lift the cauldron, grind the valerian, add that to the mix. Drop it back down. Turn the sandglass. This gets boiled for 2 more turns, so we need to wait for this to run out again. Turn the sandglass over. Now we can wait for this to finish. Lift up the cauldron. And then lastly, this is a distill potion, so make sure you use the apparatus on the left. Gives us Henry's Dollmaker Poison, which makes running impossible. Reduces all weapon skills by 5. Really nasty. Does damage as well. You can definitely have a fun time in combat with that. Next up we have the Lullaby Potion, which we can see needs poppies, thistle, and herb Paris. Start out by adding the oil. We add the poppy to the oil. This gets boiled for 1 turn. And then we need to add thistle and boil for 1 turn. So I think for this one, we are going to wait for that to get to the bottom, drop the thistle in, turn the sandglass. And then we need to add the herb of Paris to the mortar and pestle. And then once the sandglass runs out, we can lift the cauldron up, grind up the herb Paris, add that in. And then we can go ahead, pour the potion. So a little bit of timing with that one, if you want to make it quick. Otherwise, that one is probably a bit more annoying. As we can see, Henry's Lullaby Potion reduces energy to 0, decreases perception. Next up, we have the Quickfinger Potion, which, as you can see here, needs 2 valerian, 2 eyebright, and a cobweb, which is a bit weird. We start out by adding water. And then it's 2 eyebright and the cobweb into the water. And then this gets boiled for 3 turns. So we'll drop that down, turn the sandglass, and then we know we're going to need 2 valerian in the mortar and pestle, so we'll get those placed down. Turn the sandglass over so that we can keep track of time. Turn it over again once it runs out. And then once this one runs out, we can get ready to lift the cauldron. Grind up the valerian. Add that in. This goes back down to be boiled for 1 turn. So down it goes. Flip the sandglass. Wait for that to run out. Lift that up. Grab the phial. Pour it out. Gives us the Henry's Quickfinger Potion. This one gives us some decent craftsmanship and thievery improvements, although I'm capped out on both of those now, so it's pretty much useless for me. Next up, we have Book Blood, which is very nice for stamina management. For this, we're going to need St. John's wort, handful of comfrey, and a dandelion. To start with, we add oil to the cauldron. Grind up the John's wort. Into the mortar we go. Activate that again. And into the oil. And then we add comfrey in. This gets boiled for 1 turn. And then we're going to lift this up. Get the dandelion ready. Add that in. And then we need to use the bellows for 1 turn. Lift that up. And then pour that into a potion. That was a bit ad-lib trying to speed that up there. I hope this goes well. Yeah, there we go. Henry's Book Blood. So pretty easy. As we can see, the potion for this is increase your stamina by 60% and regen by 30%. Pretty strong if you're going to be going into battle. Next we have Aqua Vitalis, which slows blood loss. Shouldn't really be all that necessary most of the time, but here we go. Requires water, marigold, and 2 dandelions. Pretty easy to make, actually. To start with, we add in the water. We add dandelion to the water, so it's 2 of those. And this gets boiled for 1 turn. And we're going to need to grind the marigold, so we'll go ahead, put that into the mortar, wait for this to go down. This probably is one where you could just grind that whilst it's waiting, and then put it in. But I'm going to do it the safe way. I already nearly messed up once on the last potion. And drop the marigold in. This goes down for 2 more turns. So we put that down, turn the sandglass, and wait for that to run out. And then we can flip that over. Wait for that to run out. And then we can lift the cauldron. Grab the phial. And this gets distilled, so make sure you select the thing on the left. And that gives us Henry's Aqua Vitalis. Let's see if it does anything extra nice. If that's a 60% damage mitigation, that's absolutely overpowered. Next up, we're going to be doing the Lethean water, which is the game's version of a Respec potion. As you can see, we're going to need wormwood, belladonna, and henbane, which basically makes this a poison. We start out with spirits. We need 2 wormwood, and these need to be grinded up, so that's going into the mortar and pestle. 2 of those. Grind that up. Into the spirit. We add the belladonna into the cauldron. And then we brew this for 3 turns. So that's our second turn right there. Turn it again. That's going to be the 3rd turn. We're going to lift that up. And then we add in henbane. And then we distill using the apparatus on the left. Next up we have the Chamomile Decoction. This of course requires wine, 2 handfuls of chamomile, and a sage. This is done right at the very beginning of the game, but we're going to do it anyway for completeness sake. So we add the wine in. We put 2 handfuls of chamomile into the wine. This gets boiled for 1 turn while we add sage to the mortar and pestle. Once the sand timer runs out, we lift it, grind up the sage, add that into the cauldron, grab a file, and pour. And just in case you wanted to know, for 2 days, sleep will heal you 5 times faster, restore energy 3 times faster. So actually can be pretty useful if you brew the Henry's variant of this potion. Next up is Painkiller Brew with Spirit, 3 poppies, 1 comfrey, and Marigold. For the Painkiller Brew then, we are going to pour in the Spirit. We then need to add in the poppy to the mortar. There are 3 of these, so 1, 2, and 3. Grind that up and add it into the pot. We then add a marigold into the spirit as well, and this gets boiled with the bellows. Okay, so we're going to drop this down, turn the hourglass, and then we're going to start pumping. In case you haven't seen any other parts of the video, the idea is to hold down the pump button and then we let go and repress it as the hand settles back at the top. Otherwise it interrupts the flow, and that can be a problem with this particular potion. I'm going to get that done, and then bellows. And we can lift this up, grab our comfrey, this goes into the mix, and then we boil this for 2 more turns. Just normal boiling now, so drop it down, turn the sand glass, wait for this to go down 1 more. Once this reaches the bottom, we can turn that over. Now we can wait, hovering over the cauldron, for the sand to run out again. Once that happens, we can lift it up, grab the file, and this is a distilled potion, so make sure we use the thing on the left to give us Henry's Painkiller Brew. If you're struggling with this one, try using fresher ingredients. I was having trouble using dried poppies for some reason, but it's come out fine this time. I'm going to skip the fever tonic because I'm not convinced we can get more feverfew, and this is a quest-related recipe. So, moves us on to Lion's Perfume. So let's get on with this one. So for this, we need mint and we need sage. We start out by adding spirit to the cauldron. We add 2 handfuls of sage to the cauldron. And this gets boiled for 2 turnings, so we're going to drop that down, turn the hourglass. Once that gets to the bottom there, we're going to turn it again. Once this one runs out, we're going to need to lift the cauldron up. So we're going to do that now. We'll lift that up, it's nice and boiled. And then we add 2 handfuls of mint to the mortar. We grind this up. Add that in. Nice and simple. We'll just grab the file and then we can pour this one. I'm not sure if perfumes will come out as Henry level, but I guess we'll see now. It does. And here we can see Henry's line and perfume gives lots of charisma. Next up we have Minter Perfume. So 3 dandelions, marigold, and a bit of mint. We start out by grinding the 3 dandelions. So we get those into the mortar. We add wine to the cauldron. And we also want mint in the mortar as well. So in there in total is 3 dandelions and 1 mint in the mortar and pestle. So we're going to go ahead and grind that up. We add that to the wine. And this gets boiled for 2 turns. So we drop that down, turn the sandglass, wait for that to run its way down. We're going to turn that over. Now we're just going to add the marigold in next. So we're going to wait for that to run down. Once it gets to the bottom, we're going to add the marigold, turn the sandglass, and we need to pump the bellows for 1 turn. And we can go ahead, lift up the cauldron, grab the phial. And this perfume is a distill, so make sure we use the thing on the left. That gives us the Henry Minter perfume. Let's compare that to the Lions, shall we? So this is a weaker but longer lasting charisma boost for those that want to have it. Entirely up to you guys, which one you prefer. Next up, we have the lead shot gunpowder, which we can see we need some water, saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. Good thing about this is most of these ingredients are not perishable, so that makes things a bit easier. To start with then, we add water to the cauldron. And then we add sulfur and saltpeter together in the grinder. Sulfur, saltpeter. And then we grind those together. Add those to the cauldron. And they get boiled for 2 turns. So drop that down. Turn the sandglass. Allow the sand to drain its way down. Turn it over. And then wait for the sand to run out so that we can lift the cauldron up. So we're going to lift that up. And now we grind up the charcoal. So we add that to the mortar. Grind that up. Pour that into the cauldron. Now this also gets boiled for 2 turns. So drop that down. Turn the hourglass. Turn the hourglass again once it runs out. And then we can lift the cauldron up. And then we look at the mortar here, and you can see we have pour and grind, which is going to finish off the mixture, which gives us lead ball. Next is the Scattershot Powder. We're almost there. Only soap after this. As you can see, all we need is water, saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal again. But this time it's infused charcoal, which I think means the leached one. So for this one, we add water in. We grind the sulfur and the saltpeter together again. Drop those into the water. And this gets boiled for 3 turns, so we're going to drop that down, turn the hourglass. And being as the charcoal is also going to get ground up, we're going to put that into the mortar ready. There we go, turn the hourglass. This starts our 2nd phase. And then once it gets down again, we turn over. It's the last one. Once that one runs out, we're going to go ahead, lift the cauldron, just like this. Then we can grind up the infused charcoal. And add that to the cauldron. Drop that back down to be boiled for 1 more turn. Just let the timer build up. Once that's finished, we can go ahead, lift the cauldron out. Then, much like with the last one, we go ahead and we pour and grind. And that gives us the scattershot ammunition. And that leaves us with soap, which, by the way, if we make our own soap, we actually are able to make our clothes extra good. And so, as you can see here, we start with oil, 2 thistle, a dandelion, and some charcoal. Soon I can edit it, and it will be done. So for this, we're going to start out by adding the oil. We take 2 thistles, we add those to the mortar, grind that up, put it in, and then we boil this for 2 turns. So drop down the cauldron and turn the sandglass. And then we're going to turn the sandglass. Once this is done, we're going to get the dandelion ready. And once the sandglass goes down, we're going to drop it in and then immediately turn the sandglass again. Turn the sandglass like this. At this point, you can probably add the charcoal to the mortar and pestle. Then once the hourglass is finished, lift up the cauldron, grind up the charcoal, add that to the mix, get a phial, and then pour. Which gives us soap.